What's up, everybody? Got an action-packed show for you today. Physio Friday. We're going to have none other than switched on physio Phil White joining us in a moment. He's just cycled across the country and on the other side, but pull that curtain for us, mate. He's just cycled, so he had to come in and have a quick shower. But he's here, and we're going to be answering a bunch of questions. I'll share with you who's the lucky people up first. We got a question from Michael Forrester on wrist pain that is going to be answered, and then we've got a question from Vinny Brown about his hip flexor that we're going to answer. And we also have a question from, where is she? Sonia. Where's Sonia's question? Let me just see if I can bring it up. Sonia Valentine. And her question is related to some back pain, sciatica. So why don't we first start with Michael?
Why don't we first do a normal intro?
Oh, yeah, why not? Yeah, absolutely.
No, I'm going to edit later.
Yeah, no worries. Let's do that.
Hey everyone, in case we haven't met, my name's Rad Burmeister. I'm the co-founder of Unity Gym. I'm joined today by my brother Yani Burmeister and by our resident physiotherapist, Phil White. We are the creators of Unity Gym, founders of Unity Gym, and the creators of the UMS, the Unified Movement System, where we turn driven people into superhumans. If you want to know how we do it, grab one of our blueprints as the flexibility blueprint, the strength blueprint, and the nutrition blueprint. You can get it for free, and that's going to give you some great insight into our programming. And even better, if you're listening to the podcast or watching on YouTube, come and join our private Facebook group, the UMS Movement Mastermind, where we record these podcasts live and answer questions as people ask them. How are you, Phil?
Yeah, good. Feeling a bit like mini-me in the back on the video.
Yeah, we're trying to work that out.
So.
Yeah, anybody that's watching,
okay.
It is a fisheye. Phil's actually at least as tall as me.
I think I'm the tallest here, aren't I?
I think you are, yeah. I think
that.
Phil's got about 2 centimetres on me. But it's the guns, man. It's the guns.
Check these puppies out. No, but so stoked to have these beautiful mics in front of me. It's really something, eh?
Yeah, it's a different experience.
Level up.
Yep.
It is, isn't it?
Unreal.
It is. And you're feeling a little bit sick this morning.
Yeah, I just woke up with crazy reflux, and that really slowed down my morning and made my cycle. Well, I wasn't planning on cycling, but I ended up cycling. It was very uncomfortable, but here I am.
I love the fact that you wake up not feeling good in the stomach and you decide to cycle. Like, how many
it turns
kilometers?
out that, boring things about cars not being where I thought they were and buses not running at the same schedule as they used to pre-corona times. So that's fine. Cycled here. And
there you go. There you go. We're ready for Physio Friday. Look what we go through to bring this show to you guys live. Guys, You're very lucky.
Here it is.
So, first and foremost, I want to say anyone who tunes in live, please get questions in. If you've got any questions for Phil, please do so and get them in the comments section. We will work through as many questions as possible. We've got a couple of bangers to start off with from people who have got in this week. And I think we might start with Michael Foster. So I will, Michael, I'm very sorry if I'm pronouncing your surname wrong. It looks like it might be Forster. I will read this out and build some context, and then we'll go with Phil straight away, because you may as well hear it from the person who's probably most educated on this first. So, Michael's saying, hi all, I started doing rehab for golfer's elbow based off Unity Gym YouTube videos. I was having really good success, but then ended up getting the Quervain tendinosynovitis. Can you pronounce it? Tenosynovitis. Yeah, that sounds good.
I'm not
Pain in the snuff box region, which is a sort of area, if you flex your thumb there, it's kind of the base of the thumb, almost where it joins the wrist. Rad and I had a good laugh about the snuff box last week.
Yeah. Apparently it's not sexual.
In both hands, due to all the wrist work I was doing that apparently my hands weren't ready for. It's been 1.5 months, and I know you need to load the tendon and build up tolerance, but I am struggling to gain any traction in my rehab. Trying radial deviation and opening a rubber band in my hand, mainly isometrics and eccentrics, as concentrics really bother it. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Love the Unity Gym content and appreciate everything you are doing. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah. To start off with, I just got to get my regular kind of little disclaimer out there that, again, the thing I really want to get across is giving you guys ways of understanding things and questions to ask a professional if you do go see them. If it is me online, that's one thing, but again, this isn't like specific medical advice for you, but a bit of information about de Quervains generally, so apply it as you see fit. So just have to get that out there, but I really like that you've been so proactive in trying to sort this out yourself, and if it is, I'd be interested to know if you have had a Dr. Google diagnosis of the de Quervains, or if it's actually been diagnosed by someone as de Quervains. But with de Quervains, you're really trying. I like that you're trying to be proactive here, but you're kind of missing the point with de Quervains, because the difference here with a Tenosynovitis is what de Quervains is quite different to a tendinopathy. So we've talked a lot about tendinopathies before, but a Tenosynovitis is a whole nother kettle of fish, and it needs a different rehab response. So instead of loading this tendon, what we actually want to do is deload it, because what a tenosynovitis is, it's the connective tissue sheath that runs around the tendon. So you can kind of think of it like it's like a lubricating sort of substance which helps the tendon move across bony prominences without getting friction damage, exactly. Yeah. So what's happened is this sort of synovial sheath has actually got irritated, and so then every time you go and put it through movement, you're getting excessive rubbing through there, and when you get an inflamed tenosynovitis, the inflamed synovial sheath, it gets bigger, therefore takes up a bit more space, and then moving it will kind of continue to aggravate it more and more. So it's a tricky one, because what you've got to do is try and reintroduce load to the area while kind of taking away that friction. So what needs to be done is more around. There's actually like splinting is quite often used in de Quervains as a way of just forcefully like immobilizing for a while, just to let it settle down. And this is a time where you'd look at potentially talking to a doctor about anti-inflammatory sort of stuff, potentially using ice, but again, work with a professional on this, and then really sticking to just isometrics. So if you do still want to maintain your sort of upper body strength and stay in the workouts, it'll be as like you'll have to kind of go about it in trying to keep your wrist in the most neutral position as possible and minimizing thumb movement. So it's a really tricky one.
Yeah, it sounds like
it's not just like train through and you'll be right. It's like every time you're putting it through these like.
So is the answer to let it rest, like opposite to tendinopathy, or is it to? Because we often say that anti-inflammatories is not a good idea anymore, because you want that process to have taken its course.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. So it's a tricky one, because if you're like, it's kind of inflamed, so this thing that didn't take up much space is now taking up more space. So when it takes up more space, it's easier to aggravate it. And so it kind of goes into this like cycle of aggravation where, because it's bigger, it's easier to aggravate, and it's sort of, unless you give it relative rest and some way of getting that inflammation down, it's sort of hard to get back into doing things without aggravating it. So again, it's best to work in terms of using anti-inflammatories. You want to work with a medical professional, so GP on this. Physio is kind of in like, tell someone to take anti-inflammatories, that's beyond our scope. Right. So really it is something that you'd want to talk to them about. But obviously there's so much you can do for inflammation in your body that's not related to medication. So really doubling down on, your sleep, your stress management, your nutrition, looking at dietary things you can supplement, like not necessarily supplements, but, anti-inflammatory sort of like green tea or something like that, where you can...
Fish oil is
all of that sort of stuff can help with that systemic inflammation, which might help it out. But really it does come down to relative rest and avoiding the aggravating movements, which is in this case basically like lots of like thumb movements and wrist movements. So if you're spending a lot of time on a mouse or like playing computer games, that's probably going to be aggravating.
Can you still snuff the box?
Waiting for Rad to add something really intellectual to that conversation, or to just bring it back down to the level that most of us play at. All right, Michael. Well, look, Blakely actually commented quite generally here and said, I can't comment on your rehab options and stuff like that, but he's sort of gone into trying to reduce systemic inflammation, which is a good option for any injured person. Dr. John Berardi from Precision Nutrition, where I've done my only nutrition certification and study, really he's very big on that. Like when you're injured, trying to work on lowering systemic inflammation. There's two types of inflammation. Can you explain that quickly?
What was
the
it?
differences
Just quickly,
between
because I'm
the
going
two?
to put it up and put it in the comments. What was that video that you told us to watch on inflammation? That like 6 months ago, you were saying that there was a really
the long one from the
paleo.
Not paleo. It's basically like a high.
What should I
high
search
fat,
for
low
to
carb.
get it?
Why low carb? And I'm not saying that low carb's right for everyone. I think you should kind of match your carb intake with your energy output. That's a whole nother discussion. But it's a video of a
Dr. Peter Bruckner.
Yeah, Peter Bruckner, who wrote Bruckner and Kahn, which is like the Bible of sports medicine. He's got an Order of Australia medal for his contributions to sports science in Australia, and he was like the Liverpool FC sports doctor, Australian cricket team. Like, he's done everything, and basically he's given up all of that and Olympics for years, and now his sole focus in life is about reducing sugar and carbohydrate intake in people, because it's just so linked to inflammatory disorders.
Right. I've just shared the video there.
Yeah, it's really good.
I can tell you that personally, my experience with evolution of my body and my health and fitness has led me to I'm always trying to level up. So whenever I get comfortable with what I'm doing, I think, okay, what am I not doing that I could, now work on that's going to take me to that next level? And for the last several years, maybe, 2 or 3 years, my big thing has been to reduce inflammation, because it's something that I never actively did. I never was like, okay, I'm going to try and reduce inflammation. And so the first one was sugar, the second one was alcohol, and now I'm looking into dairy. And I can tell you, whatever, it is something that is, some people agree with and some people disagree with, but I can tell you from personal experience what it does for my old injuries. When I do eat the foods that are, known for causing inflammation, everything starts to hurt again. And I was just saying this morning on the show, my body feels better than it's felt probably ever at the moment, because of this active reduction in foods that cause inflammation. So,
this is one of the things that, was a real light bulb moment for Dr. Bruckner, working with the Australian cricket team, and had a player who they'd done every medical intervention, and I think they were potentially even doing surgery on this guy's. They had done surgery on this guy's knee, or maybe they were considering it, and basically they. This cricket player who got a bit fat decided to do what his sports doctor was doing, because the sports doctor had lost a bit of weight, and so Peter was just like, try it out, do a low carb, and that was the end of his knee pain. He was on all these hardcore anti-inflammatories and pain medication that just wouldn't fix it, and then it was that. So obviously that's a N=1 sort of example, but that's what prompted Peter Bruckner to explore the science. And that video it's about 50 minutes, but it's well worth a watch. But back to your question about the different inflammation types, basically there's acute inflammation versus kind of chronic inflammation. And they're the two big things to consider. And acute inflammation is super useful as a way your body deals with an acute injury, where it sort of stimulates all the healing pathways, basically. But where it starts to become a problem is this kind of chronic inflammatory process, where it's
the systemic inflammation, where it's just throughout your entire body. Basically,
yeah, exactly, and that's usually the result of these kind of more lifestyle dysfunctional things, like it's your body just basically being like, in a constant state of mild injury, which doesn't resolve. So. Yeah,
and I just wanted to point that out, because we do talk about the fact that it's important to let inflammation take its course when you're injured, when you've got an acute inflammation caused by an injury, but there is inflammation in the body that is not a good idea and not good, and can really make it hard for you to overcome issues and make you feel like you're just in a constant state of compromise. Cool. And because I don't know where Michael Forster is tuning in from in the world, but it's quite common in America because of the Western diet. We have this extremely high sugar, processed carbohydrate, sugar and fat diet that is one of the major causes.
Seed oils as well is like a big thing that Bruckner talks about as well.
Yeah,
so,
that's right. All right, cool.
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly go to Steve Kavanagh, saying he had Achilles heel, I was guessing Tenosynovitis, and end up with crepitus because I trained through the pain. And that's just something I wanted to bring up as well. It's often a misdiagnosed thing with people just kind of think everything's an Achilles tendinopathy, but there's a differential diagnosis there. So something that you've got to get clear is if it is a tenosynovitis of the plantaris tendon there, which you can, if you just treat like a tendinopathy, if you've just gotten to running, for example, with the lockdown times and you've gone out running and you're starting to get heel pain, if you treat a plantaris tenosynovitis like a Achilles tendinopathy, by doing lots and lots of heel raises, then you're just going to keep aggravating it because, again, it's that synovial sheath that is getting aggravated, and that's where you really have to move towards isometrics and relative rest. So, yeah, it's just really, I think it's important to sort of realize here, like we've talked a lot about tendinopathies here, but understanding that this is kind of an example of where you need someone who really knows what they're talking about to have a look at you. So, so make sure you do get your diagnosis.
Yeah, look, there's a lot you can learn from Dr. Google, but you also got to be really careful because there's a lot goes into the education of someone like Phil who has the ability to diagnose, and it is a science. It is a real skill. I was a mechanical engineer for 6 years before I was a personal trainer, and one of the big skills that you developed as an engineer is the ability to diagnose issues within a motor vehicle or a structure or whatever, and it separates you from the masses. It's really, really important because you look at a variety of different mechanisms and things like that to sort of figure it out. And
it's a funny thing because it's such a valuable skill, but if you're really good at it, it seems like it's not valuable because you do it quickly. It's like that kind of classic plumber's
exactly right.
dilemma where you can spend a whole day trying to fix something yourself, but if you get someone who can fix it in 15 minutes, and charge you a lot for it, that's valuable because they know how to deal with it quickly. So,
all right, let's move on to Sonia. Sonia said, "Hi guys, I'm a new member. Joined today because I saw you on YouTube. Thanks, Sonia. Welcome to the tribe.
Welcome.
I'm 30. Just started recently with strength workouts at home, and I want to improve flexibility and achieve splits one day. I am also someone who's been suffering of sciatica, terrible back pains, and right hip pain. Of course, I'm not flexible, working on it, but recently I started having terrible pain again. Do you guys have any advice for me? Will doing these routines and the 18-minute flexibility program help me out? I realized achieving flexibility is a long-term process for me because the main goal is to actually achieve full body mobility, as I hope that will help me with my sciatica, back and right hip pain and gain me strength too for my other body goals, workouts, etc. I want to know if the pain that I will most likely have during this process is a normal pain, because I know for sure I will have it. But without exercises, I will not improve my condition for sure. As you mentioned on YouTube, it's hard to make difference between good pain and bad pain. Any advice and tips? I'm so hopeful of this. First of all, I would like to say, which I promised we'd talk about a little bit, which is the difference between, I guess the uncoupling of certain pain to the actual injury and how that progresses in time, how the body heals itself and often will make progress, but it's not always illustrated or represented by the level of pain difference, and so that's something that we can give some value to with Sonia, but also, talk about your experiences with this sort of stuff. Rad and I are always banging the drum of, approaching the body in a holistic fashion where we develop strength and flexibility, really quite evenly. And my philosophy or my theory is that your body is really, really good at healing itself so long as you get out of its way and give it the right stimulus in the right dosages, in the right frequencies, manage the load and things like that. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, I think sciatica is a really tricky one. It's one that often gives people grief for a long time, and that's something to kind of get out there straight away. It's often not a quick fix, and I think also sciatica is kind of one of those terms that have made it into the main, to the general populace of basically people just start describing any sort of back of leg / hip pain as sciatica. And as we sort of talked about just then with tenosynovitis versus a tendinopathy, there's real devil in the detail about how you go around diagnosing something like sciatica. So just to give a bit of an example, with pain that you feel in an area that is not necessarily an acute injury, that can happen from a nerve referred pain. It can happen from a joint referred pain. So if you have a hip issue, that can sometimes manifest as a buttock pain. It could be a pelvic thing. It could be a sacral thing. There's just so many different areas that can refer pain in different ways, and the way that the way that you experience it. So whether it's like a sharp shooting pain, whether it's a diffuse sort of pain, often you'll end up getting out like a pen and almost like mapping the spread of the pain. That will give us a good idea of where that pain is actually coming from. So I'll talk now about sciatica and lower back nervy sort of things, but just keep in mind that, again, it's one of those Dr. Google things that happens where people Google, like, I have pain in the back of my leg, and therefore they think they have sciatica when they haven't gone through the diagnostic process of figuring it out.
Yep.
So, especially if you do have nerve pain that's shooting down past your buttock area. So if you're getting pain that's referring down your leg that's related to back movements, I definitely recommend going seeing a physio, seeing a medical professional about like strategizing how to get past that. Again, it's not the end of the world. Lots of people have nerve pain or nerve issues that are totally fine and resolve really well, but it's just one of those things where you just want to get some good guidance on when it does come down to referring pain. So because it really is quite dependent on the structure. So in terms of what the things to look for with sciatica is we want to try and get exercise and movements that will centralize the pain. And so what I mean by centralize is I'll use my upper body as an example here, but basically if I have nervy arm pain and I'm getting shooting pain down to my fingertips, and then I do some neck exercises and do some strengthening around my or stretches or whatever, and then now I only feel it to my elbow, and that's a really good sign that we're heading in the right direction with the rehab exercises. So if you can do something that you notice, like, okay, my pain was at my fingertips, now it's my elbow, then that's the kind of path we want to head down, and that kind of gives us an idea about the movements that are aggravating and the movements that are easing. So, for example, like if working into extension is helping centralize the pain, then it's probably you've got a flexion issue. So we want to try and strengthen up extension of the neck. So that's just an example of centralization, and so that might mean that you kind of build a program around developing extension strength and some neck postural sort of stuff. And if that starts to get it up to the shoulder and then eventually back to the neck, that centralization is really good. So in how that refers to sciatic pain, if you can work with a professional to find the movement pattern that helps centralize that pain, that's a really good start. And then we can try and that gives us information about the things we want to sort of strengthen. So if for example, lumbar extension is quite easing, then potentially it could kind of give us a bit of an idea that you're spending a lot of time in flexion, maybe sitting on the couch a lot on your laptop because of corona times, sitting in that sort of pelvic posterior tilt with a lot of kind of flexion might be the thing that has sort of set this off, and maybe it's working into extension. So that's an example of how you'd go around sort of trying to find the easing pattern and then trying to strengthen that pattern. But when it comes to nerve stuff in the lower back, again, and with the goal of flexibility, you kind of it's quite a tricky thing to do concurrently, in that usually these nervy signals come from like basically an inability to control the passive structures around that area, and you're getting irritation from movements that's not controlled. So if we can try and build up control in a small range of motion and then build out from there to then that's going to be the way that you'd progress through rehabbing something like this. But the tricky thing is when you're trying to do mobility, you're trying to get full body mobility and like the splits and those kind of goals, if you're doing that in a way that you're moving into all extreme ranges of motion, that's going to make it quite challenging.
Yep. Yeah, okay, fantastic.
So that's quite a lot of information there. The other thing to just think about with nerve stuff and buttock pain is also neural tension as well. So I'm not sure if you guys have done like the neural glide sort of...
Neural glides and flossing.
Yeah, exactly. So that could be something to consider as well if you're trying to move into things like the splits. You're going into some pretty extreme neural tension there. Yep. And depending on how much experience and how much like your training age around stretching out your nerves, that can be a really... a challenging thing that can just take time. So it sounds like you're respecting the process and you're aware that it's going to take a while to achieve it. But it's all about trying to build your strength and control in the within a small range and then building it from there.
Yeah, neural flossing is something that I've done a lot. My hamstrings have been a real problematic area for me. A lot of tension there ever since my spinal injury. that seemed to be the area that just locked down and tried to protect movement or prevent movement restriction. And so to open that up has been a long, lengthy process that I'm still working on to this day. And I can tell you that I'm 50% better than where I was when I started, but I'm a long way away from someone like Rad, you know. And so one of the techniques that I have employed, because when I go to stretch my hamstrings, I don't feel it in my hamstrings at all. I feel it in the nerves through my feet, up through my calves, my perennials, in the backs of my knee a little bit, you know, but it's not like a nice stretch in the body of my hamstring at all yet, you know. And so I have to really floss the nerves, point the toes, circle the ankles, do all sorts of things to just slowly ease that out. So Sonia, if you look up nerve flossing or what did you call it?
Just neural tension.
Neural tension. There's lots and lots of great resources.
So it's basically related to like moving, going into a stretched position with your hips and with your hips in flexion, your knees in extension, and then using your head and your feet to basically control the tension within your nerves. And I'm just going to say that if you do have sciatica, this might be one of the most aggravating things you can possibly do for it. So again, that's why it's really important to be able to understand the kind of root of the issue and then treat it accordingly. So. Yeah,
that's right. And to answer your question, the 18-minute stretching routine is a nice, gentle routine. It will be very good for you. It covers the entire body, which I think is what you need. I don't like to compartmentalize these things it's very hard not to do that because you have this symptom that you want to just focus on. But quite often it's doing something that you never thought would affect it that is the best release. And so I like to say, just work on your entire body, strength and flexibility, and stay the course, be gentle, accept that it is going to be a process, and trust in the process, have faith.
Well, just on like whether or not it's a good idea to train through the things. I think one of the worst things you can do is stop moving entirely. If this puts you off any kind of training, then your ability to dynamically control those, having that active structures actually controlling your lower back, controlling your spine, like those muscles are not good. They're going to go to sleep and they're going to atrophy and, get smaller and weaker. So it's so key to try and keep some general strength and movement. So if this pathway either leads to you sitting more on the couch and watching more Netflix because of lockdown, you can't go out for walks or whatever, versus, getting in and doing some general strength training, definitely doing some general strength training is the way to go. But again, trying to do that in a way that you're not continuously aggravating this nervy sort of pain. And I think it would be really worthwhile if you did just try and get a bit more sort of an acute diagnosis, a more laser-focused diagnosis of what's going on there. So,
yep. Cool, we got one for Rad here. We'll get him out to break his silence over there. This is from Northwest Taekwondo Clubs, and it's very specific to the way that you put the workout together for warming up. And he said, "Hi there, I've purchased the 18-minute stretching routine and I was wondering, could you clarify something for me? In the video, you have the foam rolling sequence at the beginning, but you also mentioned it is a good idea to be very warm to get the best results. I was wondering, should I be rolling before the cardio? I would use it to get warm and then start from the squat routine."
Yeah, there's different ways you can do it for sure. And a big part of training is finding out what works for you. Different things work for different people. So what I really liked about the 18-minute stretching routine when we developed and when I was doing it daily, and it's something that's just become sort of so ingrained in my brain and my movement that when I go down and do a little bit of a stretching routine, I just do a version of that routine that is right for me on the day. And that's what I hope that everybody gets out of it, is that it evolves into something that works for you. And the reason why I really love that foam rolling at the start is because you can be stone cold. You could get out of bed and do foam rolling, and there's virtually no chance that you're going to hurt yourself with that process. But it also stimulates circulation, can even elevate the heart rate just a little bit because of the nature of the way that you have to hold yourself up and position yourself when you do it. And it rolls into that the 18-minute routine so nicely. But you absolutely could do the foam rolling first and then stop and then go and do 1 minute of high intensity cardio training like horizontal running to warm yourself up before you do those stretches. There'd absolutely be nothing wrong with that, and it would be very, very beneficial. So for sure, absolutely do that if you want to. You could also do the high intensity cardio before you do the foam rolling. To answer your question, to be more specific, because I know that is more of a wishy-washy answer that I just gave you, if it was me and I wanted to do cardio before I did that 18-minute routine, I would definitely do the foam rolling first and then the cardio second. Because I find that, especially in the winter months, when you do that warm-up and then you do foam rolling, you kind of cool back down again by the time you finish the foam rolling. But when you do the 18-minute routine, the nature of the way that you're standing up and getting down and moving around, that does keep your heart rate elevated more than the foam rolling does. So that's how I do it.
It's bizarre. Like, I don't know. I've worked extremely hard to turn that foam rolling sequence, foam rolling routine into a sequence of movement that doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And I became very good at it. I could continue through the entire thing without breaking the flow of movement on the foam roller. By the end of it, I'm dripping with sweat.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really warmed up. But that took a little bit of practice. The way you roll around and transition to the different body positions on the roller takes a little bit of practice.
You're not as hardcore as me, though. So, I mean, it's...
I could see something coming there. It was brewing in his mind, yeah.
No, it's absolutely true. If you do that stuff properly, you're going to get a great result from it, and it really does warm you up. And, like we always say, this is my philosophy, and I know that my philosophy is different than other people's, but I always say to start slow with what you do so that you can learn the movement and really understand how it is to get, like, the body positioning is a huge part of any new movement pattern that you do in any new sequence. But as you get better at it, something that is a sequence, like a set sequence, like the 18-minute routine, the goal is to start making it faster and more efficient. And I don't like the word faster, because faster often, people interpret that as try to go faster and lose quality. But that said, the 18-minute stretching routine is called what it's called because we used to do it in 18 minutes. And I can do it so easily in 18 minutes, and so can you, and so can Richard, and Phil probably can as well. But when people,
not so much.
when people do it for the first time, they're like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. I can't keep up with this. And that's why I made the slower version that goes for 46 minutes, because yes, I get that when you're learning it, like, it's impossible to do it in 18 minutes and get, good quality movement. But as you get better, you do it at a faster pace. And when you do it at that faster pace, man, are you warmed up by the end of it, But anyway, look, going back to the question and the specifics of this question, what would I do? Yes, I would foam roll. Then I would do a minute, 60 seconds of cardio, and then I would do the 18-minute routine. I think you're going to get a great result if you do it that way.
Okay, before we dive into some of the live questions, I want to just tackle Vinny Brown's here.
Jack, we are going to answer your question in a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to, and we'll get through all of them. Morning, guys. Not sure how this happened during deload week, but somehow I seem to have managed to tweak what I think is my hip flexor. I love that you put what I think and you emphasize that, because it's just, we try to really push you guys to think outside the square and get a proper diagnosis. Don't just rely on Dr. Google. Front of the hip on the left side. I notice the pain when I do things like high knees or any lifting of the left leg, really. Not a really sharp pain, but an annoying pinch. I've been doing the at-home workouts every day, including the Wednesday routine again on Saturday. Admittedly, and this might have been the cause, I've been working my squat several times per day for about 2 to 3 minutes. So I'm assuming just a body weight or an air squat. Nothing super strenuous, but knowing I have a tendency to try too hard sometimes, who doesn't? Perhaps that may have caused it. Any tips would be very much appreciated so I can hit the ground running for phase 3. First and foremost, Vinny, I thought I'd done my hip flexor a couple of weeks ago, and when Phil got into my TFL for a massage last Friday, it became more obvious that it was like that whole complex down through the hip there that was the problem.
Which I think was related to the fact that you've just got into running, which is quite a different sort of thing.
Exactly
and that
right.
lateral hip kind of complex is very involved in single leg stance on, which is...
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's one of the good things about diagnosis and being good at it. You look at the thing that's changed the most and go, okay, what have I changed recently? And that's most likely 90% of the time caused the issue. So both of you guys can have a crack at this, because Rad is an absolute... he's got a lot of skin in the game when it comes to hips and hip flexors and things like that. And So does Phil.
Yeah, I just want to get in there early and just say that often kind of people demonize the hip flexor and say it's the cause of all evil because of, sitting down, short and tall.
It is the cause of all evil.
The pain you're feeling there when related to sort of end of range squats, it's very unlikely a hip flexor tear or anything like that, because if you think about what tears a muscle, it's lengthening ballistically or loading it really heavily, and you're not like your hip flexors really, you barely ever do that. Unless you go into a very aggressive lunge with weight, like are you going to get it into that sort of explosive eccentric kind of work? And unless you're maybe a sprinter who's doing lots and lots of sprint training, you're like with explosive concentric action to do knee drive, like it's very unlikely that you're loading your hip flexors that much. And it's so what is more likely?
Big muscles too.
They're really
quite small little muscles, but in the thickest point, they're like tubes,
it's a pork loin. If you've ever had one of those pork loins where it's like that kind of long, tube of muscle, like that's a psoas. Yeah. Like they're long, thick, they're very meaty muscles, and you're very unlikely to have injured it there. So what is more likely is that you've got some basically anterior hip impingement if it's related to going down into the squats, where basically it's that inability to control the anterior glide of the ball in the socket. So I've talked about that a lot with shoulders, and we've talked about it a bit with hip with the FAI stuff we've talked about with your previous injuries. But basically, with any ball and socket joint, we've got muscles that are the global movers. So your hip flexor is one that is getting you up into flexion. You've got your glutes going into extension, and your glute medius going into abduction. So we've got these big muscles that are controlling these big movements. But what we've also got are smaller muscles that help control to keep the ball in the middle of the socket. And if we're not keeping the ball in the middle of the socket very well, when we use those big global muscles, they're also going to pull the ball within the socket and close down that space within the joint, which going into hip flexion, especially into going down deep into a squat, is going to cause basically the passive structures. So the bone and then the cartilage in your hip, so your labrum, and your hip socket, the acetabulum, you can get, if you kind of repeatedly done that through sport throughout your whole life, you can get slight sort of overgrowth of the hip joint itself, and also the thigh bone can actually, like the ball of the femur can also get kind of bigger from repeated use. And so that's the most common thing for anterior hip pain, is that FAI, where we're just basically not controlling our ball within the socket very well. Sorry, that was a bit wordy.
No, so
I love Phil's use of anatomy, the thigh bone. I love when we get into these conversations and Phil starts throwing out words like the thigh bone.
Well, it's just totally not not useful for me to just be like,
no,
Latin,
I love
Latin,
it.
Latin.
No, I love it. I'm serious. I love it. It's really it can be really frustrating sometimes when you're talking to a highly educated person and all they're doing is throwing out these Latin words at you, and even as a personal trainer, you're kind of sitting there listening to them nodding and trying to decipher everything that they're saying. So it's really
and
good.
I think it's something with health professionals that they really pushed us in our degree to use terms that people understand, because it's a way in which I'm pretty big on the sort of power dynamics within healthcare and how that kind of results in kind of fairly unethical things in private healthcare especially. And I think if you try and just wow the person and make it sound like you're really smart, you know exactly what you're talking about by just confusing them with Latin words, then that's it's kind of unfortunately quite effective, but also it's it's not helping anyone.
Well, it's really funny because 16 years ago when Yani and me were studying our Cert 4 in personal training, do you remember that one of our instructors, when we were doing anatomy, said to us, look, if you guys can learn this well, then when you go and see a physiotherapist or a chiropractor, if you can talk, shop to them, then they'll really respect you and you'll get a lot of referrals. And then here I am with Phil, thinking I know my stuff, and he's like, the thigh bone and connects to the knee bone. And
that's exactly right.
But it is a shift where it's kind of, you need to make it people understand. The whole goal is to educate you guys on how this stuff works. So
what do you think Vinny's dealing with?
I think it's a common thing with people who get into a whole lot of squatting that they haven't, maybe
Weak
done.
glutes.
Well, he's saying where he feels. So if we go back to his question, he's saying where he feels it the most is where where he raises the knee. So it is using the hip flexor in that motion, but he's saying he thinks he got it when he squatted. So it's likely that maybe it's just a small strain in the muscle.
No, it's not a strain. Basically,
see, that's why we've got Phil here.
So when talking about all that sort
of
active versus passive structure stuff and a ball and socket joint, if you go into a bodyweight squat, deep into bodyweight squat, you can imagine you're going like right into hip flexion. So you've now got your hip joint. You've closed down the space at the front because we're bending the knee up to the hip in that squatted position. So when you're in there and you haven't had that much exposure to it, and you maybe don't have like great control around there, and maybe you've got some of this FAI stuff from a previous sporting life, then it's basically it's an anterior hip impingement. So you've closed down the space and you've aggravated these passive structures. Then so you can imagine like the joint itself is a bit irritated. Now when you're doing anything where you're lifting your leg, you're activating your hip flexors, which is those big global muscles that are going to lift the leg. But as I've talked about with ball and socket joints so much, is you also get the glide within the joint. So now when you're sitting there and you try and lift your leg, if you're driving is a really common one that I felt as well with this. When you're just doing those little activations of your hip flexors, you're flexing your leg, so you're closing down that space, and you're getting an excessive anterior glide because you have poor control through the stabilizing muscles in the back of your hip. So you've now...
It's my answer to everything. Weak glutes. It's weak glutes, man.
But yeah, basically you've aggravated these passive structures through the squat, and now your lack of control is getting more aggravation. So
there is a 99.9% chance that it's the piriformis here. That's the problem.
Well, that, kind of, yes.
It is. This is actually the one time where we can say that's probably likely to be
the other thing
problem.
is there's six external rotators of the posterior hip
so
that work like a rotator cuff.
Vinny, are you, just remind me, are you a part of the UMS online coaching group? Because if you are, you've got access to our hip rehab program, and that's going to do wonders for you in this situation.
It's a piriformis strengthener.
What's he said? Vinny Brown, I'm guessing I should tread very gingerly with front splits for the next week or so. Yes, I would say so.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, there's so much you can do with, hamstring stretching without going into in a range hip flexion. So you can definitely keep working on the muscles. It's just that I'm imagining, like, again, I haven't assessed you, but it's a really common thing where just being in full flexion while the structures are aggravated is going to be problematic. So try and work on your the other muscles without being in that end of range hip flexion, and then try and build some more dynamic hip stability stuff, which single leg sort of work, balance sort of work where you're getting those external rotators of your hip, which just like in the shoulder, help stop that anterior glide with hip flexion.
Vinny, let me know if you're a part of the UMS online coaching group, because you do have access to a cracker of a hip stability program in there. Otherwise, we'll figure out how we can get. We did a whole week of videos on this on YouTube, didn't we?
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Didn't we do a whole bunch?
I'm sure we did. But in all honesty, like those 3 rehab programs that we've created for either the hip, knee, or shoulder, they are worth their weight in gold if you are suffering from stuff like this.
Maybe we should do a bundle.
It is really...
A bundle flash sale.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Should we, because we're well out of time, should we just answer a couple of these live questions?
Yep.
So, Jack...
Sorry, just really quickly before we do. I just remembered with the Tenosynovitis de Quervains, which we talked about right at the beginning. There was someone who was, like, I love how helpful people are and getting on and answering questions, but someone was recommending scraping jade stones, doing kind of the what do they call it, Graston technique sort of stuff, basically getting in there with a stone and scraping the tendon, and that is the last thing you want to do with a tenosynovitis. So just for that de Quervains, if you've got something where you've got an aggravated tendon sheath, if you get in there with a stone and actively aggravate it with a stone, that's going to not be great.
Worse, so did it have to be a jade stone, or could I use a crystal?
Mate, I think it's referring to that tool that
that Mick used.
Yeah, well, there's these other ones that you get, which are like these really flat stone. Anyway, but yeah, similar to Mick.
Yeah.
Don't do a Mick.
Yeah. Not with this at least.
So Jack Kinnikin has saying, I'm doing Rad's press to handstand masterclass and so close. First thing I'm going to say is, post some videos, brother. I want to see, because that move, when unlocked, is a huge achievement. Let me see how you're going so we can help you. I have problems with my left shoulder. It seems to impinge when I push and makes it hard to push into max extension. Any suggestions? First suggestion is you're not pushing into extension, you're pushing into flexion. So, yes, Phil? So he's pushing into max flexion, and he's getting impingement on his...
I mean, he could be kind of pushing back into extension, but yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, I've just been talking about the shoulder on my Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 3 p.m. How to Not See Me little show, which is something I'm doing on the UMS Mastermind of those afternoons. It's a bit of work in progress. I much prefer talking to people in a conversation. So for those who have been watching and supporting, thank you so much. But yeah,
but is this one of those, the answers there, just watch this show?
I mean, I've talked about it a bit, but I will. I just wanted to do a little plug, you know.
Yeah.
I'm learning from you guys.
No, I was going to say, let's drive some people to those shows.
But yeah, basically with what we're talking about here is almost exactly the same thing as I just rattled on about with the hip, with basically having the inability to control or like a lack of control of a ball and socket joint. And the answer is building up strength and dynamic stability through your cuff in a functional sort of way. So tricky, and I've talked about it in that show a bit more about how important it is to train your axioscapular muscles, which basically your the muscles that control your scapula, which you guys do so much with your straight arm strength workout. So really doubling down on that, becoming very good at sort of lower trap activation, which is something that Aidan Potts chimed in about before, which I've got him on doing the active hang component of a hang. Yeah. So focusing on trying to draw your chest up, bring your shoulders back and down. Try that before you do your handstands. Do, like 30 seconds of active hang, contracting for 3 seconds, relax, contract, relax. The focus you want to have is trying to keep your upper traps totally relaxed through that. You want to keep your chest tall as if you're doing a chest to bar chin-up, and trying to think about that when you go into the handstand, so that when you're in that sort of elevated and protracted position, that although you're elevated and protracted, you also have the anchors of your lower traps keeping your axioscapular muscles stable, which will then allow your cuff to work more efficiently. So
yeah. Which again, I had to plug, but the shoulder rehab program is absolutely phenomenal at creating a periodized approach to that that Phil had a bit of an input in on creating. So yeah, that's if you want a little bit more than that, check out that program. It's really effective. So let's have a look at, we are really running out of time here, so we will jump in
Steve,
quickly.
I would definitely sign up for Yani's soliloquy underwater masterclass to help me with my live sessions.
What's that?
So Steve Kavanagh just said, would Yani do a talking / soliloquy underwater masterclass to help Phil in his live sessions? I would sign up.
Paul Scholmandelli is saying, hi guys, been doing the at-home workouts as much as I can with an apparent shoulder tendinosis. Phil's probably going to say tendinopathy. Doing okay with it other than the pike push-ups, which I stay away from. Any advice, or should I still be doing the program or focus on something like the shoulder rehab routine if that would work for tendinosis, which is tendinopathy? So, Phil, I mean, it's probably the same kind of advice that we just gave there.
I guess when you say shoulder tendinopathy, there's generally two structures that people are referring to here. Either it's usually the supraspinatus tendon at the top of the shoulder here, or it's the bicep at the front here, which we've gone through before, is actually a tenosynovitis, similar to Quervain's. So it would be about being clear about which of those structures is impacted, and whether or not it is in fact a tendinopathy, or you're just using that as a catch-all term for sore muscle bit. Yeah. So because the rehab really changes, because remember with tendinopathies, we really want to load them heavily. With tenosynovitis like this, we want to try and stop the friction, which in this case is having better posterior cuff control. So it does really change, and we need to be quite specific about this, which is why it's
it's
good to
not
work with someone.
Yeah, it's not the shoulder is a really complex joint.
It's kind of funny because you like the specifics really matter for just like, but the specifics matter, but like a general approach is pretty good. So I think if you're doing the at-home stuff and getting like good shoulder balance and you're following the right techniques at a cues, and like that's a pretty good thing to do for the shoulder. But when it gets to really focused shoulder rehab stuff, like it does need a bit more specificity than that.
Yep.
Sorry, Paul.
Cool. Well, look, I hope you all got something valuable out of that. I know that I always do. Phil is the man that's taught me the majority of what I know about rehabilitating injuries and how to deal with certain injuries, and he's been an integral part of my ability to get to where I am and do what I am with all the niggles and injuries that I've suffered over the years. So if you didn't know, you definitely want to jump on to the Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday 3 p.m. Sydney, Australia time chats that he does, and also go over and check out Switched On Physio.
Switchedon.physio is the website.
Switchedon.physio is the website. And for anybody that's listening that does have anything that they would like a more specific diagnosis and action plan for, jump onto that switchedon.physio website and book an online consultation with Phil. I can tell you right now, there's a reason why Phil works with us, and it's not just because he was the physio that came and approached us. Yani and I have worked with a lot of people, and there is a criteria that we have to fulfill before we recommend any practitioners to any of our tribe. Number one is that they're good at what they do, and number two is that they have some skin in the game, which means we're not interested in working with somebody that has all the textbook knowledge but doesn't actually, work on their own body, actively pursue sports and an active lifestyle themselves. It's a big belief for us. So Phil's an amazing person to work with. If you want to work with him a bit closer, go and check out that switchedon.physio and get in there. Yep,
and really appreciate Aiden jumping in and giving me some ideas for what I could do on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 3 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time show. Definitely, it's a work in progress, and I want to make it as useful for you guys as I can. So any tips or advice or things you'd really like to know about would help, and any interaction on the show will make it feel like I'm having a conversation, which would be good.
Hey, look, it always starts like you're talking to nobody, and it's just
there
one
are a few
of those
people
things,
there. I'm just sort of
it just takes a bit of time to get traction. That's right. People get used to it. Good work, everybody. Been a great show, cracking week. This is Friday for us in Sydney, Australia, so we're going to be signing off for the weekend, but we are going to post a podcast from the archive. Are you still doing that?
Yeah, I haven't for the last couple of weeks, but I'll
get back on it. I was looking through them today, just going, because the podcast, I'm getting lots of good feedback. So big shout out to everyone who's listening and downloading and subscribing to the podcast. We're really pushing forward on this, and we're investing a lot in this studio. This is going to be a big part of our future. So thank you very much for joining in, and special shout out to all of those who join us on the UMS Movement Mastermind, where we stream the live recording. It's always some fun, get a bit of interaction, get to ask your questions, and generally just create the flow.
Yeah.
And
we crossed 5,000 listens on the podcast, which is really exciting.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool.
If you haven't already, cool. And if you're listening, if you're watching the replay of this live recording on YouTube, make sure you get over to the UMS Movement Mastermind private Facebook group. Everyone's welcome. We just like to make sure that you are striving to level up, and you're not just there to spam and things like that. So you've got to agree to the code of conduct, and otherwise you are in. Everyone, have a fantastic weekend. To those of you in America, enjoy your work day tomorrow, and be healthy.
Have a good weekend, everyone. See you soon.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, that's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.